Hello, everyone. Happy Friday and welcome back to REKT Vision. Mando is away this Friday, so we have Sergio Silva, co-founder of Popset, and also another former Barclays colleague of mine. Sergio, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me again. Always happy to come on and chat markets with you guys.
Yeah, for those of you listening who don't know, Sergio and I worked um, at Barclays Capital in NYC in the same building, probably even the same floor, maybe, I don't know. Um, but we never knew each other until we actually met each other in crypto, which is kind of weird. But we were in the same building basically for about 3 years before we both realized we found crypto way more interesting than TradFi.
Yeah, it was different floors for sure, but definitely the same building. But
Yeah.
here, excited.
Right. So today the show is titled Uptober or Rektober. If you guys are listening on YouTube or X, feel free to comment in the various chats and to let us know if you think it's going to be an Uptober or a Rektober. Kind of neither here nor there right now. What do you make of the start of this month so far, Sergio? Is it in line with your expectations? Are you in the Uptober camp or the Rektober camp, or just in the disengaged camp, which many people are in, to be fair?
Yeah, definitely not disengaged. I mean, I think it's hard to discount or I guess expect something like the escalation that we saw in the Middle East, right? I mean, obviously that situation has been bubbling up, and it's just a terrible thing for humanity overall. But any kind of just war or escalation like that is going to spook markets, and you can't really put that into crypto charts or the expectation of monetary policy and the like. So I think it was very idiosyncratic. It's probably just a good opportunity to continue to average in. I think it's one of the things that a couple of times that I've been here with Mando when you were out doing dad duty, I think averaging in makes sense, and so this is a really good opportunity for that. As unfortunate as the circumstances that led to the sell-off are.
It's a funny one because, and I was speaking to Mando about this yesterday. People are pointing to geopolitical tensions for the reason for us being down. But if you look at stocks, the S&P 500 is basically unchanged in the last 5 days. Even the Nasdaq is basically unchanged in the last 5 days as well. So crypto seems to once again have taken a much bigger hit than TradFi. Is that truly attributable to Middle East tensions, or is it just crypto showing its hand once again to some weak positioning or weak conviction in terms of holders in the market?
Yeah, I think the latter, right? I mean, crypto is obviously much more global, much more retail. People that are much more fickle in their investment portfolio, kind of like holding periods and the like. So you had that pump into the end of September. I think got really people excited. Obviously, Uptober was trending on crypto Twitter. Everybody stopped talking about anything else other than how high Bitcoin and the meme coins and everything else was going. So yeah, as soon as you get those kind of wicks that we got the other night because of the war, people are just quick to turn around and sell, which you don't really have in traditional equities market. As you know, a lot of program trading, a lot of more institutional kind of deployment in different steps, and it's a lot harder for things to just turn around and dump that easily. Especially when I don't think the thesis has changed for anybody, right? We got a 50 basis point cut, and now we get good economic data, which kind of points towards a soft landing in a less restrictive monetary environment. It's not up only, but it's up in that direction.
Yeah. I think the other thing about crypto is, especially for retail traders, it's so easy for people to take leverage. And I think, people just got pulled up into that first week of October, a ton of leverage out there on Bitcoin, majors, probably even meme coins as well, to be honest with you. Like people are trading that stuff on leverage too. And when you have it wasn't really like a black swan event, but when you have an unexpected negative headline, all that leverage just gets wiped out in one thing. And it feels like we haven't really even recovered from that as well, because there's probably still quite a lot of leverage in the system, is my guess. But you had that guy in Hyperliquid who got liquidated for like a $14 million loss or something that that people were after, I think, for a while. So I just think when there's like that much leverage in the system, it is what creates this volatility, and maybe that's why we've been underperforming stocks, at least in the last few days. We had a big payrolls number today. The number came in at 245,000 versus 254,000 actually, sorry, versus expectations of 140k, and that was versus last month's new revised number of 159K. So that's like a massive, massive, massive beat that we haven't really seen since like the first half of this year when we're getting those huge beats. And obviously the last 3 or 4 months, we've had weakish numbers in the kind of like sub 140 to even like sub 100 range. What do you make of that? Like, how do you think the market is taking that number? It's somewhat unexpected. Does this change, in your opinion, the monetary policy outlook for the rest of this year? What's your kind of like instant reaction or near-term reaction to that number?
Well, for me, the first reaction is obviously this is going to get revised at some point. Like every number has gotten revised over the last year. I think that actually you mentioned our days at Barclays, one of my guilty pleasures was trying to figure out what went into NFP every month and kind of like the birth death model of businesses and how all that kind of affected the number that got reported. So this is just, a whatever number. I don't think it really represents reality that much. Obviously, we're in a very, very politicized environment. So this is good for the current administration and going for Democrats up in November. Some people are going to try to construct the 50 basis point cuts as politicized as well, given that this number shows that the economy is stronger. So it really depends on your narrative, right? And like your politics even. Like, is this a good economy that maybe the Fed cut too much because of politics? Or is this a bad economy where the numbers are being made up to help somebody? So I think it's hard to really make much of this particular instance. I think you'll continue to see as long as the market doesn't price out any cuts for the rest of the year, I think we'll be fine and we go in that direction of higher. Now, if you start seeing, kind of what we saw today, where the majority were pricing in more cuts, that getting shut down or going to zero, then I think that's going to really be a headwind for risk assets. But when the Fed starts cutting, they just don't stop at their cuts. So I think we're fine. They just hold it in to the one that they did last month.
Yeah, it looks like markets are still pricing in about 97% probability of a 25 basis point rate cut. For the FOMC that will happen this month. There's a tiny probability now of it being a 50 basis point cut. But I think you're right. It's like we've just been through this like crazy hiking cycle where the Fed literally hiked interest rates every month for whatever it was, like 8 months, 9 months, and then we kept it high for another few months. And that's like quite a long process that takes its time to have its effect on the market. It doesn't get priced expectations get priced in straight away and future expectations get baked in into equities as well. But the actual impact of higher rates or lower rates doesn't get priced in until that actually happens mechanically. And like, I don't know, for example, tons of people out there, just this is like a really basic anecdotal example, but tons of people out there probably have their money. If you have fiat, you'll probably have it in a savings account, and your savings account probably pays you about 5% right now, which is not bad. Like, that's pretty decent. And you're just like, oh, well, I'll just stick it in there. I'm just going to like earn that 5% and whatever. But if that goes to like 2.5%, or if that one day goes to zero again, you have to like redeploy that capital in something riskier. And we just don't see and that's just like a retail level, right? Like, think about what it is at an institutional level. It's like the effects are orders of magnitude. So until you actually I get like stuff gets priced in early, but until you actually physically see these rate cuts happen, people don't reallocate assets because they don't need to yet. And there's probably a ton of money in low risk, high interest rate products out there that will have to reallocate as rates come down. And we just haven't seen that mechanically yet. So I personally am not fading like the power of sustained consecutive rate cuts over the next 6 to 12 months. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. maybe some of it is priced in. I don't know. Stocks is at all-time highs, so like
stocks spend like 40% of their times at all-time highs. I think they're no longer like a leading indicator. They're just a consequence of this economic model that we've built in the West over the last few decades. And so I think for me, obviously, kind of like the premise is debt's not going away. The big governments have a debt problem. The rates have to come in. You're going to start to see some of the lagged effects, as you mentioned. Yeah, like risk and stocks and the like get put in and out quite quickly, but stuff like real estate is still a little bit of like a slow-moving crash. You see it in commercial real estate in the big cities in the U.S. You're starting to see it in residential real estate in some like the hot states, Texas, Arizona, Florida, where a lot of people bought Airbnbs and they're not doing so well anymore. So that, has kind of frozen the real estate market. So I think it pays to take cues and look at areas beyond just, stocks, which are obviously also very top heavy. The indices are very top heavy, or just crypto, which again is more like liquid retail trading, in and out, a lot of emotion, a lot of leverage, like you said. And taking a much broader view, I think, the economy, while it's still strong, it's still going to require some more easing or policy normalization, really. And that should be good for risk overall.
Yeah, it's a weird one because it's like, I feel like every fundamental aspect right now within the market is like, this is good for risk, but everyone knows that. And so there's an element of it being priced in, but I don't know. I just think like if you have 6 months of 25 basis point rate cuts, you're going to see that things kind of have to be, barring like, geopolitical tensions or other things happening that are obviously negative for markets. And those could be like things that we're combating against. But yeah, I just struggle to see us like not higher in risk assets. Whether that translates to crypto, who knows? Like we haven't really seen it this year happen as we would have expected. And you've had years in the past where it hasn't happened for crypto as well, like 2019 perhaps is an example. I'm sure, I mean, I wasn't even trading crypto then, but I'm sure in earlier years as well, you probably had this like breakdown of correlation to stocks. So I'm curious to see what happens with crypto if these moves keep continuing. But I don't know. In my opinion, it will also have to go higher, just as the law of beta and traveling down risk buckets as rates go lower.
Yeah, I will challenge that. I think that the whole consensus view that this is the year that crypto should have gone ballistic is wrong. And I think we were talking before the show, like people are desperate for a big move, considering, kind of like the very rough last couple of years that we had in this industry. But if you subscribe to the 4-year cycle and the like, really the year that was incredible were like, 21 and 17. So that means 25 is it. And that's really where you're going to get those, 6 months of rate cuts in. You're going to get a new administration that, whether it's Trump or Harris, will have to do something to kind of like pump up the economy. And I know that confluence of factors really comes to head next year. And Bitcoin's still doing pretty freaking good this year. We were much lower to begin the year. Obviously, we had an early run and we've given it back, or not really giving it back, but stop, the momentum, and that's why people feel bad. The summer was really choppy, but as an asset, it's performed pretty well. I think the problem we've had is that a lot of the other stuff is just, not done well, right? A lot of like altcoins, all the infrastructure coins, people that maybe things that people got excited about because they got it for free because they were airdrops. They're just gone one way only, and I think that's why people are pretty, pessimistic. But overall, if you're just sitting in Bitcoin and the hottest narrative this year, obviously also Solana, pretty freaking good. I think you'll be happy. So I think as an industry, we're really good at psyching ourselves out or going the opposite, right? We saw it last month where people are like, this is new paradigm. This is, going to finally go to 100K. And yeah, I think it takes a bit more time than just that, and a bunch of like tweets going back in either direction.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I'm still very bullish here. I'm very bullish on crypto. I think there's a lot of leverage, and we had the unfortunate news this week and over the weekend, which caused it to move lower. But I think it's just like another bite at the apple to get some risk on, I think, ahead of the next few months. And yeah, with the Trump, don't forget, with the Trump, if Trump wins, it's going to really change the dynamics of that market, I think. And if he loses, then maybe it will set us back a few months. But I think it's just very hard not to be bullish here and have some risk on. I think it's a good segue. What you started speaking about is a good segue into the next thing I wanted to chat about, which is Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance is now north of 58%. It's at its cycle high. I think we even touched like 58.3 or 58.4% earlier. Alts really underperformed in that move lower we saw in the past week. It's not the first time that's happened. We had a pretty tough cycle really for altcoins. Most altcoins are actually down on the year. I mean, even ETH is, I think, potentially even down like 3 or 4% on the year or something. What do you think on Bitcoin dominance? Like, is it getting to a point where it's starting to top out, or is this just the kind of like theme of this cycle because of ETFs?
I think it's a theme of the cycle. I think, it's also like early cycle still, given the fact that Bitcoin's performing so much better than everything else. tells me that we're not even close to anywhere near the top. But as we were saying, right, like institutional equity investors are much more systematic. They're more disciplined. And to me, this chart, it just looks like ETF's inflow story chart. That's what it is. There's no other coin other than Ether over the last month and a half that really has that avenue of potential inflows from a much, much larger base of investors. And this is what this shows compared to the fact that a lot of bullshit, sorry, excuse my French again, but like just absolute trash tokens have hit the market. And whether we like it or not, they extract capital, they extract the ability for things to perform, and you lose money in those. They might even extract investors from the market, where people maybe just say, instead of buying this this infrastructure coin, I'll just buy this infrastructure stock and do a lot better. And so I think that's what you're seeing in this chart. So the combination of the massive inflows, obviously Larry Fink on Bitcoin to anybody that will listen, as well as the fact that the majority of new launches this year, and not calling out anybody individually, but the reality is those coins don't do anything other than enrich certain early participants.
Yeah, I think that's the best description of why we've seen Bitcoin do well, but we've also seen meme coins do well. We've seen altcoins struggle, because it has just been a story of like high FDV, low float, trend lower into the cliff. And once the unlock schedules start to activate, you see things trend lower perpetually, because there's just like so much sell pressure by VCs. And then I don't know if you saw the Celestia thing last week, which was who was it? Which I think Polychain. I may be wrong, though. I think it was Polychain that was the investor in that, but they were able to actually, despite their tokens being locked, they were able to earn staking rewards, which they were then like selling to the market, like, which was unlocked. And I think they've already done like a 3 or 4x on staking rewards. It's something like a 20 million investment for them, and they sold like $80 million of staking rewards already, which is kind of nuts. Like, I don't know how something like that is allowed alongside a proper cliff.
Yeah, I'll always say is many such cases, and I think people are waking up to that. And actually, I just finally had an opportunity to watch Murad's video from Token 2049 on meme coins, and I had been arm's length when it comes to meme coins, just because I've been focused on Popset and got some other stuff going on in my life right now. But watching that video actually yesterday on a flight, I realized that it actually fit my original thesis for NFTs and what brought me into the space. And so I actually spent the morning kind of like looking around, like, how do I grow my meme coin bag and really start deploying more of the other, stuff that I have in the ecosystem more towards meme coins. And it's it was a bit of a paradigm shift for me. And yeah, do I want to own VC tokens? Of course not. Like, why will I do that when there's nothing in this world that's going to create demand for those tokens in this current regulatory environment? Now, if that were to change with the Trump administration, I think it would still take a few more years before certain tokens could start accruing cash flows and the like. So why waste? Kind of like, why be exit liquidity when you can play in a potentially fair game? If at the end of the day, the majority, the reason why people are here are to make money and kind of like find financial independence. So let's maybe play in a game that has a little bit more fair rules, rather than early investors being able to monetize their investments that are supposed to be locked or protecting you, which obviously they have no incentive to do so.
It's an interesting point, but I also feel like the problem people have with investing in meme coins now is the same problem they had with investing in NFTs now, because you're past the point in the cycle where it was truly early. It was truly early on stuff, perhaps at moments last year when you had all the Pepe stuff, and then also around December last year, right before everything kicked off. So we're past the point where it's like super early on meme coins, in my opinion. And I know some people like Murad may disagree with me there, but let's just say you're like, okay, I'm a crypto investor. I've never really played in meme coins before. I've had alts and Bitcoin. Now I just own Bitcoin. I want some beta. I want to buy some meme coins. You look at across the meme coin landscape, and there are literally like tons of coins out there, and just like, what the hell do I actually buy? And I felt like, and by the way, there's no like fundamental real I mean, I do actually think there's more analysis to meme coins than people realize in terms of like understanding memes, but and understanding communities. But there's no real like model driven way to look at meme coins, and it's very similar to what NFTs were. Like, people who are early on NFTs did really well that cycle, and then when it got to a mature point of the market, it was just like, well, which NFTs do I buy? There are just like thousands of different projects. How do I know what's relevant and what's not relevant? And at least with NFTs and artwork, you could, justify some things saying, well, this was, the first ever piece of art on chain, or this is a cultural collection like punks that kicked off this movement. But, you don't really have the same sentiments truly on meme coins because yeah, there's some culture and community around it, but they are just like tradable assets that are fungible and trade much more like FX might trade compared to how art might trade. They're two very different assets, in my opinion. So, like, yeah, I get it. Like, I think, yeah, it's worth having exposure to meme coins, but how do you pick what to buy if you don't have anything? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you just go for the big ones that's like Whiff and Pepe and, Doge and Shib, or as soon as you start dropping below into like the sub 1 billion market cap things, there's just like a ton of different things to choose, and it's just like, well, what's the difference between if I buy Popcat or Mog or I don't know, like Nero or whatever it is? Like, there's just tons of them out there.
Yeah, no, I think, and that's where the fun comes in, right? And that's why I think Murat's presentation really opened my eyes, because I started to look at things from a very fundamental perspective, and that's why I've been mostly like in Bitcoin and Solana and Ether this year. But I remember how fun NFTs were, and to discover the communities and like really explore just all the different elements that were kind of like arising from the ecosystem's own development. I think when I look back at the mistakes that I made in NFTs, I didn't trade them. I bought them and helped them. You guys traded them and did really, really well, right? So I think with meme coins, that's it. Like, you just can't fall in love with it where you just write it all the way down. I think you need to be very just aware of the fact that these are just trading vehicles, and I think they can be a good opportunity to make money in the space. I'll rephrase that. They're a much better opportunity to make money in the space than other types of vehicles, assuming that you understand that there's a possibility this goes to absolute zero and it's mostly just a gamble, and you just want to participate in the ecosystem from that perspective. Which NFTs were at some point. I think a lot of us were very delusional when it came to like, this is a new paradigm. Like, no, a lot of the stuff was not. And a lot of the stuff was just a result of the huge liquidity wave in 20 and early 21, which, by the way, I think maybe not as big, but it's coming back. It will potentially be crypto, and within that, meme coins. Advocating for anybody to have a large bag of meme coins. I do think that, for example, I've been missing having some fun in crypto lately. I think I'm going to kind of like double down, at least on the time that I spend just researching more and trying to figure out what's driving this, because I honestly like missed most of it.
Yeah, it's definitely has not been as fun as like NFT mania of 2021. Like, trading NFTs and collecting NFTs, it was just like way more enjoyable. And trading meme coins is kind of fun, but it's just like, you kind of get a bit brain dead after a while. It's just like, oh, this is just like another number that I'm pushing around. Whereas at least there was another element to NFTs that you could appreciate and enjoy. And, like the excitement of like minting a new collection and your mint was unrevealed and figuring out, finding out what you were going to get, and that kind of like lottery aspect. It's like buying a packet of football stickers and seeing what you get. Like, that feeling, I think I definitely miss, and you don't really get that in meme coins, which is why I think NFTs will come back again. But not for, maybe we have to wait a while still.
I don't disagree, but in the current state, I don't think we're going to have fun NFT mints for a while, because the market's so saturated with the ones from 21, and there's so many back holders and bad memories. I think that for anybody looking to maybe understand crypto culture a little bit better, it really is going to be in like meme coin communities, rather than it's going to be on like infrastructure tokens or restaking tokens or any of those things that frankly are even hard to understand the technology behind it. And a lot of it is just pure vaporware. And so, yeah, if you want to have fun and just enjoy crypto while things kind of like heat up again, I think it's a good opportunity to understand a little bit more of what drives this market. And it could be an edge down the line. Don't know if that's going to materialize or not, but definitely better than just watching your airdrop tokens just completely melt down.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one altcoin that has done pretty well this year, and especially in the last few weeks, is Sui, which has been, I think, the strongest performing L1 probably in the last month or so, as it reaches quite close to year-to-date highs. I think it's been almost like it's been over a 2x in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and that's also despite quite a large unlock as well. And I think right now there's about 28% of the supply circulating within the market, and the rest of it is due to come to market and be unlocked over time. But that's a pretty strong performance for that token, all things considered, and it's quite a notable outperformance versus other L1s. Have you looked at Sui at all or gotten involved? And I'm seeing the Sui ecosystem kick off, and I'm seeing people look at NFTs there and meme coins and Sui and all that kind of stuff. But is this something that you've looked at? Like, what do you make of this performance?
No, I think it always comes up when I come, be a guest on your guys' show, and I always tell myself I should go look into it, and then I totally forget. I just see the notifications of Binance bought it, Sui stopped short, and I'm like, this keeps going up and up. I've been chasing it mentally since 0.77, and it's 180 now.
Yeah.
I think within crypto, one of the things I've learned personally is just stick to your areas of strength or areas of focus, so you don't spread yourself too thin. And I've kind of mentally put aside some of this stuff as I focus, one, on Popset, and two, on just kind of trying to re-engage with kind of this new generation of what crypto has become. And I miss this, just like I miss so many other things, but I'm happy for everybody that caught it. I think, narrative wise, it's probably, the next Solana kind of thing, where people are seeing the success of Solana and its ecosystem, and how maybe having a more, dare I say, centralized approach to kind of the foundation and encouraging development. And obviously, Breakpoint was such a success because the Solana team is so focused on kind of shepherding the ecosystem in a certain direction, that people are expecting, another high performing chain like Sui to kind of run that same playbook. And that's the closest I've come to just that, making that mental parallel and chatting with Mando when you've been out.
I think my view on this, and this is a very basic view, but I think when you're comparing these L1s now, it's just marketing. It's whichever one is really good at marketing themselves and establishing a community. At the end of the day, yeah, if you use Solana over mainnet, it's definitely way cheaper. It's definitely way faster. Although I don't even know how. Sometimes I feel like it's even slow sometimes. But if you use Solana versus any other L2, the performance is pretty similar in my opinion. And maybe Solana is still cheaper, but we're talking about pennies and fractions of pennies here, so it's not that big a difference for anyone, for any regular way person. So and I've used injectives, stuff in the Cosmos ecosystem. I've used Say, and they're all fast and cheap. So it's just I don't really, apart from a blockchain being faster and cheaper, how else can you really differentiate yourself to anything else? And I think that's just activity levels. And where does activity levels come from? Well, it really comes from marketing and community. And right now, to be honest, this year it's really just come from meme coin activity. Solana's been driven purely by meme coins, and not even its NFT market by any means. And that's why Solana DEX volumes have been higher than ETH DEX volumes on many occasions. So I feel like the thing that flipped on Sui for me was there was that moment a few weeks ago where every KOL was speaking about it again, and you started to see a couple of meme coins do well on Sui, and people make money on it. And I was like, I'm actually seeing this. I'm not a Sui follower, but I'm seeing this on my time. This is now infiltrated itself through to my timeline because people are making money on that chain. And when you see people having success on something, you just jump on the bandwagon, right? And that's it's a really, I guess, dystopian way to look at all these blockchains, and probably a punch in the face to anyone who's spent time building these blockchains and can tell you about the actual technical aspects of them and why one's better than the other. But honestly, you just want to make your chain the casino and the one where all the degens congregate on, and that's how you get a lot of activity, and that's how you get high price action. And that's why ETH did so well in 2021, because everyone was just using ETH to trade NFTs, and you're in your head, you're man, I'm using ETH so much all the time. So it makes me so bullish ETH, and it's the same with Sol this year. So that's what I'm like. I'm kind of starting to see the signs of that on Sui. I think it's still early to tell, and to move an entire meme, to have like insane meme coin activity on Sui that's sustained is going to be tough because we've seen it happen on Tron, kind of died away. Had like moments on Binance Smart Chain this year, which kind of died away. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be a marketing and community thing, but yeah, you get a few meme coins that do really well on Sui, and people start making like millions of dollars out of thousands of dollars of costs. I think it's of base costs. I think it's gonna. I think it could have potential then.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing in crypto that does better advertising than making the early holders or like early participants rich, right? We saw it with every single thing from Bitcoin through Ethereum, ICOs, NFTs, meme coins. So tell you what, you talk about marketing, Sui through what looked to be a really fun party at Token 2049 at Marquee. I was in and out in like 30 minutes because I was really jet lagged. But yeah, if that's what's capturing market share, is that what's making people like really want to own and be part of the community, then they're doing a good job, and you can see it reflected on the chart. Obviously, I will put it on my to-do list, and maybe next time that I'm here, I'll give you my report back on what I thought about it.
Yeah, curious to hear what you say. In other news, we have the SEC looking to actually appeal the Ripple Securities law ruling. What do you make of that? That's the headline that I did not really expect to see this week. Definitely a bit of a strange one.
I mean, at this point, what do you expect of the SEC? They're just clowning. All due respect to the people that work there are trying to do their job. It's clear that leadership has completely lost the plot. They fail to protect investors. They're just some sort of, I don't know, personal mission to like destroy an industry for absolutely no other reason than a personal vendetta. And yeah, this is again just like kind of like trying to beat a dead horse. They've done nothing to prevent anybody from getting rug pulled. They've gone after legit projects. They've engaged in like really, really bad ways, and pretty much try to trample on like the rights of U.S. people by acting this way. So what do I expect from the SEC? Hopefully change soon. And yeah, just, I think the SEC plays a very important role in America. And I think it was built on the right foundation, which is to really protect the little guy from getting screwed over by like the smart or kind of like, those snake oil salespeople. But instead itself has become just like this weird kind of, place where things go to die, technology goes to die. And if they were actually helping people not get rug pulled and people not get defrauded, then okay, fine, maybe a little collateral damage is to be expected of a human organization. But they stop FTX? No. They stop anything else? Celsius and anything else? No. What have they stopped? Anything but maybe Uniswap turning on the fee switch, which at the end of the day, like, it's just stupid. So what do I expect from the SEC? Nothing good, and I hope for change.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a clown show. They turned a blind eye to everything that was happening with FTX, which is the actual thing that people genuinely lost a shit ton of money on, and then they're going after all this other stuff like Coinbase, which is a US company registered on the New York Stock Exchange. It's like completely American, and they're kind of sort of like shooting themselves in the foot. But it's an interesting one because I think there was a $125 million fine imposed on Ripple, which was quite a significant amount below the $2 billion the SEC was targeting. So quite a disparity in the outcome. But I think the thing that will be interesting to follow with this is they've just filed a notice of appeal, and the actual appeal itself often comes a month after the notice is filed. So that's probably going to lapse the election. And there's been a lot of chatter about obviously Gensler stepping down, and I can't remember his name, but the guy who was head of like the crypto unit at SEC and was responsible for leading dozens of cases against crypto as well. He's also stepped down as well. So I've heard, obviously I think Gensler is out the door if if Trump wins, but I've also heard lots of people saying Gensler's also out the door, even if Kamala wins as well. So I'm curious to see, especially on this case, which is obviously SEC versus Ripple was a very large case in the last 3 years. I'm curious to see if we see this appeal get withdrawn in the next few months, because if father noticed, they have to now work on this appeal, and we'll see it over the next few months, but that will lapse the election. So I think that will be very telling of whether the winds are actually truly finally changing at the SEC or if they're not.
I mean, it's this versus XRP ETF getting approved, right? It's pretty much like real life poly market in that. What is it going to be? Is it the appeal gets filed and it makes sense, or the ETF gets approved and then that gets going? I don't know, man. I just hope for change and for progress and technology to be championed in the US and everywhere else, which is, what's really been the difference between, our society versus others, that ability to encourage entrepreneurship and technology and make lives better. So, yeah, hope for that.
So moving on to something a bit more interesting, there is going to be an HBO documentary coming up next Tuesday, I believe, which claims to reveal the true identity of Satoshi Nakamoto, the so-called founder of Bitcoin. I believe there's actually some Polymarket odds on who HBO will identify. Let me send you the link on that, or we can get it up on screen. Have you?
I saw a really funny thing yesterday when I was on the plane, and I don't remember who tweeted it, so I want to give them credit, even though I don't remember. But it said something like HBO could not find a good ending for Game of Thrones. How do you think they're gonna be able to find out who Satoshi is? That cracked me up because I just finished Game of Thrones. I know I'm like 20 years late to it, but yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see who they identify. I think a couple of these guys here on the Poly market are no longer with us in this world, so that would probably be a net positive that all those Bitcoins are gone. And if it turns out to be, there's a couple of, I think Beanie was tweeting about, potential somebody that was in jail being Satoshi. That were to turn out to be the case, probably a small negative. But I mean, again, right, we're like taking bets on which HBO character is going to be identified. This is just as crypto as it comes.
Yeah, so the guy that's favorite right now at a 50% probability is someone called Len Sassaman, who I believe was just a computer engineer, but he actually, as you alluded to, Sergio, he passed away in 2011, which I think was maybe 3 years after the Bitcoin code was officially completed and done. So yeah, curious to see what they come up with in terms of reasoning. It's pretty easy to just be like, oh, this is someone who's no longer living, and no one can really, very few people can really like prove it or disprove it, in my opinion. But
if you had to take a guess, who do you think it would be? First of all, is Satoshi alive or dead? What do you like?
My view has always been that he's not just one person, and I think it's probably a collective that maybe made this character and created it, and I think probably more than one person has access to his Bitcoin. I think whoever those people are, they independently probably own a ton of Bitcoin away from the Satoshi holding, and they're probably smart enough to realize if you ever sell or move any of the Satoshi wallet, like the whole thing just crumbles basically. So I think like, yeah, I know people may say, oh, it's Len Sassaman, he's passed away. That's really bullish because no one can touch, all that Bitcoin. But I think there's probably some people out there who are alive who have access to it. But it would just kill Bitcoin if one transaction from that wallet would kill Bitcoin.
One signature. Yeah, that's what makes me think that it's probably somebody that's no longer alive. Because, yeah, maybe early on being able to have 1 million Bitcoin there was like cool, but at some point that amount of money has to be tempting to somebody, unless there's like a bunch of smaller wallets that nobody detected that also mined Bitcoin early on and have been using that to live off of them. But I mean, it's what 1 million Bitcoin in Satoshi's wallet. Like, what? How much is that? Like, this is just a stupid amount of money. And it's been a stupid amount of money ever, since Bitcoin hit $2-3 back in the day. So we'll see. I mean, obviously, we're all gonna watch the HBO show because it's always nice when there's media, mainstream media, talking about the industry, even though a lot of it sometimes is not too positive. But you never know. This might actually drive Bitcoin buyers back from people that backed away after 22 and like, hey, let's see how Bitcoin's doing, seeing that it's up, a nice chunk this year and that the ETFs are live. And maybe this is a good piece of just, brand marketing, since Bitcoin doesn't have that like some of those other L1s.
How disappointing would it be if they came out and said it was Craig Wright? That would be the most like.
I think HBO would if HBO had a token, the token would collapse if they came to.
Yeah, exactly. That would just be a
complete HBO token and like, yeah, no. Actually, buying Craig right here at like 2 cents is not a bad risk reward for a flyer on him sponsoring the documentary and trying to use it to change kind of like, obviously the courts ruled against him and every single fact out there points in the direction that he's lying about it. But if the bet, and I don't know who, the bet says who will HBO identify as Satoshi? Yeah. If they identify Craig, I mean, that's a what? That's 50-1 for somebody that has the resources to influence a documentary. Not too far-fetched, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that feels like a trap to me. You could say that about so many bets on Polymarket, man.
$100 at it, you make $5 or whatever.
Yeah, true. But you probably just lose $100.
I spent $100 on like worse stuff. Yeah. At drinks the other night, I get the tab and it was like $150. I'm like, what happened?
Yeah, that's very true. All right. Well, I think let's use the rest of this time to move on to some of the viewer questions we have from the live audience. If anyone wants to ask a question, feel free to hit us up on YouTube, Real Vision website. Also, we're live streaming this on X now as well. First question from Peter. Do you think the numbers today were manipulated for the upcoming election? I guess that's in reference to payrolls. Yeah, I mean, like the last payrolls before the elections, and funnily enough, we get like a massive beat. What's your view? Manipulation or real?
I don't think they manipulate every individual print. I do think the model has been skewed to show job growth higher each month during this term. Actually, I think it goes back to the Trump years, really. If you look at some of those revisions, they've just been larger during the last 18 months. But if you look at the revisions for NFP going back to the Trump years, those numbers tend to be over-reported. Do I think they took this one specifically? Not probably, but I think it's a consequence of a very, very, very administration-friendly model going back a while.
I'm a believer in all conspiracy theories, so I just think it was fixed. And I think we'll see a massive revision down afterwards. It'll just be like, it's almost going to be like too obvious that people will think, oh no, there's no way they did that. There's no way they did that. And I'll be like, yeah, they definitely did. Before we go into the next questions, I missed a section, but we just also want to showcase some more pro crypto content on Real Vision. So earlier this week, we had Chief Crypto Analyst Jamie Coots again walking through his latest reports, including one on hotly anticipated Sui as well. So we just chatted a little bit about Sui, and if you're trying to find out more, there's lots of charts, data analysis, market insights in that one. So make sure you check it out. You can access that on the Real Vision website. That's realvision.com. Back to the questions. And the next one is someone, this was from Sri on the Real Vision website. Over and Sergio, what are your thoughts on Near and Sui? Well, I think we've been through Sui extensively. Do you have any thoughts on Near protocol, Sergio, something you've looked at before?
Yeah, that's actually something that I have in my portfolio. I had the opportunity to be on a couple calls with some DAOs that were digging into Near late last year. And a couple of team members from Near were on the call. And within 2 minutes, all the stuff that we're talking about AI just completely went over my head. And the people that I was on the call with are really, really smart people. So I took that as a sign. I bought a bag and it's just been sitting there, and I've been really happy with the performance it's had. But honestly, like sometimes there's stuff that I don't understand. I just trust people smarter than me to understand it better, and I tag along. And I think there's nothing wrong with doing that. And that's what I've been doing with with my near bag. Again, to your point about seeing stuff on the timeline, maybe I do follow some near specific accounts, and there's a lot of mentions about the stuff they're building in AI. They had some good events in Singapore. I think it's a solid project that's tried to grab a niche in the market, and just going back, I'm just going to repeat myself. I've said it before with Mando here. I just smarter people than me like it, and so I trust them. And so for that reason, I've decided to just make it one of my buy and hold bags, and that's where it's sitting in my portfolio right now.
Cool, makes sense. It's not something that I've looked at extensively, but I've heard a lot of smart people who are in it. It's done okay. It's up on the year, which is good for altcoins, many of which are down on the year, but yeah, not something I've spent a long time looking at. Sui's next question was, what meme coins are you holding at this point for the cycle? So is there anything that you're holding right now that you like? And we spoke about how difficult it is to choose. So maybe curious to get your insights on what you're holding.
Yeah, so I stumbled onto Giga, however you pronounce it, a while back, and I just like the fitness-oriented community that they've built, and the memes are great. I like that people are encouraged to work out, something that I've been trying to do a lot more of. I know you've been working out a lot since your fighting days, maybe less so much now that you're a new dad, but I like that a lot. The community is good, so I've been holding Giga. Another one is the smoking chicken fish. I just think it's hilarious. The memes are really, really funny. It's so ridiculous that I could see people saying like, "Oh, somebody got rich on this." Like, that's so wild. That triggers that reflexivity that makes meme coins do really, really well. I've re-added to my whiff bag. The dog, it's wearing a hat, and so why not? And so those, I would say, are my three biggest ones right now. And like I said at the top of the hour, I'm starting to kind of like go back and do some more work. I have some Mog too, a smaller bag that did well for me, and I sold it. But just trying to really look at them in a different paradigm. Still, trading speculation vehicles, but maybe trying to add more layers to it. If we do get that huge crypto 2025 run, obviously some of this will do pretty good, and I do want to have more exposure to them than I currently do.
Yeah, my take on meme coins is, I think, I got a little bit cautious on them a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, I guess now. And then after that Bitcoin crash, every time Bitcoin rallies, you see that meme coins rally. Like, meme coins are genuinely a real beta for Bitcoin, and that trade works well. So the other thing that I noticed there was, like, at any given point in time, you have like the established memes that will do well, and then you have like another subset of memes which will go up with Bitcoin, but it depends. Like, the meme that goes up with meme coin A goes up with Bitcoin today, and 2 weeks later, meme coin A might be dead, and meme coin B is going up with Bitcoin. So in that like sub 500 million bucket, or sub even not even that, sub 200 or even 100 million bucket, there's a lot of different coins, and it really is like flavor of the week there. So my thought, and the only real meme coin that I own now in meaningful size is Mog, and my top down thesis there is like, I'd rather be in a coin that has existed for over a year and has sort of like bounced back from all these dips and has shown some true resilience, and hasn't just been like, oh, this worked for like 1 week and then now it's moved on to something else. Like, you have the cute animal thing, and then you have like the political thing, and then it just all this stuff keeps moving. And I guess if you're like really actively trading this stuff day in, day out, then you can play in everything. But if you're just like, I want to hold something for a few weeks or a few months as beta to Bitcoin, I think you have to pick something that's established and has proven that it will perform well over a long period of time. And the two for me that stood out there were Mog and Pepe. And Pepe look is at like a $3.5, $4 billion market cap, and so Mog is 10 times cheaper than that. So that's the reason why I went for Mog rather than Pepe, because I think potentially higher upside given the market cap differential. I'm a long time holder of WIF, but I sold all my WIF a few weeks ago because I think it's sort of been cannibalized by all the Solana memes, and that's kind of been my take there. Is there's less competition on ETH. There's not really much there, and they seem to have like stronger holders who don't really sell, and optically lower free floats. So that was my thought process there. But obviously, WIF has done really well in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks and really bounced back. And I do think there's something to be said for having a leader of the pack. And I still think if we're looking at Solana, it would be WIF of everything there. Next question. Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think of Bonk?
I don't think Bonk is really a meme coin. I don't view it as a meme coin. Like, it feels very corporate to me. They obviously have like investors in it. They have unlocks in it. They have like vesting periods, and people, a certain amount vests every day, I think, on it. And you have Bonk bot and other things. So to me, it feels more like a brand, I think, like some sort of like corporate style brand. And I think they've done a great job. And I think it probably is good beta to Sol, but it's not. You're battling against daily unlocks, right? And you have that gives it the same issues as altcoins have. So I would much prefer Whiff to Bonk, as I think sort of like a pure meme play, basically. Do you think, so the next question is from Jen, do you think that unlocks will radically lower the price of Sol just as it's going up? Solana has a ton of unlocks coming out, by the way. Like, I think it starts, I'll see if I can find the numbers, but I think it starts next year, where a ton of unlocks come, a ton of supply comes for sale. I think, let's have a look. This doesn't show it to me, but do you have any thoughts on unlocks potentially affecting the Sol price? And that's, by the way, not to mention unlocks from Sol that was bought from Novogratz and that's held with like 1 year unlocks and that stuff as well. I think that's on top of that as well.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't looked too closely into it. But as you were asking the question, I was reminded of like the Ethereum Foundation selling ETH every so often and causing the price of ETH to drop. So yeah, definitely will probably have an effect. Will that be counteracted with potential large inflows going into the year, or like just seeing a lot more consumer app activity on the Solana network? I don't know. I think it is one of those things that you put on your radar, one of those dates that you mark and that you keep an eye on, and then after a few times you see how the market performs and will help you make more educated decisions when it comes to the unlocks. Also, think depends on how many different types of investors you have in those unlocks. Obviously, the kind of like their fund life and the like, and that's what's going to make the difference. But I haven't taken too close of a look yet.
So here's an interesting thing that I'd like to look at for Solana, and maybe we can get this chart up. I don't know if it's on TradingView, or it's on get it on CoinGecko as well. But I look at Solana by circulating market cap. I look at that chart, and in 2021, the circulating market cap of Solana got to as high as about just under $80 billion. Yeah, and if we get the max chart up as well. Yeah, there we go. So you can see like 2021 circulating market cap Solana got to about $75 billion. This cycle, right at the beginning of the year, actually, we hit, I think, $85-90 billion in circulating market cap. And right now, the market cap is sitting like pretty much at all-time highs, like just at all-time highs. So for me, like, that's the best metric of Sol, actually, because there's still right now, as we speak, daily unlocks, I believe, and there's a ton of unlocks coming next year. And yeah, most people are probably looking at Sol price and thinking, oh, 142, it almost hit 200 this year. It hit like 270 or whatever it was last cycle, and that's where it could go. But I think you actually have to factor in the release of supply over time into that calculation. And that, I think, actually, yeah, I see these targets for Sol on the timeline. It's like three, I think Sol will get to 300, I think Sol will get to 1,000. It's like, yeah, but like you're competing against all these unlocks on an ongoing basis. So in my opinion, I think it's gonna. I do think it will affect the price. Doesn't mean Sol can't go higher, but it's definitely going to affect like how high it can go, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously a high inflation token, and the best way to hedge yourself against that, if you want to hold Solana, is make sure that your Sol is staked. And so I think that's a good way if you're a long-term holder of Sol or you're trying to hold Sol for a long time. Make sure you're staking that and at least protect yourself from that inflation eroding the purchasing power of your tokens. But I agree with you. This is a really good way of looking at it. It also reminds us how low it got during last year and what an opportunity it was. And congrats to everybody that really caught that, because it's been a hell of a trade this early into the cycle.
Yeah. Okay, next question from Rob on the Real Vision website. was this week the retest of the breakout from Total 3 and others? In other words, does Bitcoin's dominance uptrend now begin reversing? We chatted a little bit earlier about Bitcoin dominance, but what do you think? I know you mentioned that maybe it just shows how early we are in the cycle, and maybe that changes as the cycle progresses.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it last time. I think it was September 13th last time I was here with Mando, and I do think you start to separate Bitcoin performance from the rest of the market as a better way of like what are you doing? If you're just trading stuff against Bitcoin, I think you're gonna have a hard time outperforming it. Just kind of like you have a hard time outperforming the S&P. Most hedge fund managers do not outperform the S&P for a reason. If you wanna trade other stuff and really be more active, then I think you really strip out Bitcoin from the conversation. And so this to me feels like a very much an indicator of long time ago when there was no ETFs, where the perception of Bitcoin was more closely correlated to the perception of the global, crypto industry. And while it's a maxi thing to say, hey, Bitcoin, not crypto, I actually think it starts making more sense now, where it's Bitcoin, its own animal, store of value with ETFs, and then crypto, which is this whole nascent Wild West industry with all the other things in it. So to me, it's not so much of a indicator. Same thing with like stablecoin market cap, but obviously open to hearing opposite views.
I agree. Like I think Bitcoin dominance will stay pretty high for the remainder of the cycle, and I think it's just in its own class now. Like as TradFi gets involved and people start to understand the properties of Bitcoin. And the other thing is like, imagine if Trump does actually make Bitcoin a national reserve currency for the US and they hold all their existing Bitcoin. I think they're the second largest or third largest holder of Bitcoin as well. So like that just gives it a completely different quality that no other token can ever have or ever compete with. And it just puts it in its own league really. So, I've said this a lot on the show I finally come around to like the Bitcoin dominance theory while it's at this like cycle high, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not realizing that earlier. But yeah, I just think Bitcoin is in its own league, really.
Maybe in the long term, the maxes were right, and we'll all become Bitcoin maximalists one day. And honestly, well, I don't like the toxicity of some part of that community. Like the actual thought process makes sense, especially as the market digests so much paperwork, bullshit, token supply. But we spent a lot of time earlier in this conversation talking about that, so I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that brings us up to the end of the show, I think. Pleased to say, usually when we do the show, crypto absolutely nukes, but I think it's just like the Ovi and Mando combination that causes that, because last time you and Mando did the show, I believe crypto rallied, and during the course of this show, we've literally just hit 62K on Bitcoin now. So we've hopefully broken the curse, but thanks everyone for tuning in. Sergio, thanks a lot for coming on and doing the show and filling in for Mando. That was REKT Vision. Before we go, we do have a question for you guys watching. Who do you think Satoshi is or was? Post your best guesses in the comments, and make sure you're following us on X at Sergito to follow Sergio, and all our handles as well. So we will see you guys back next week at the usual time. It'll be 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, 4:30 p.m. British summertime, and I hope everyone has a good weekend, and may your bags do well and give you lots of pride, joy, and blessings for the weekend ahead. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.